Hello science people! I'm here today to talk to you about a biological concept called niche, or niche, however you want to say it. Okay, so what is a niche and why is it so important? Well, a niche is an important concept in ecology. We learn about niches because if two organisms have the same niche, what's going to happen is competition. And usually one will do better than the other, and this will lead to extinction. So let's talk about why this is important and why it happens. Okay, so if we look at a specific environment, usually all of the organisms have their own niche and there's not much overlap. Why? Well, this is because over thousands of years of that environment, millions of years of that environment, billions of years of that environment, organisms have evolved, come and gone, and what's happened is most organisms that share the same niche have already gone extinct. And so now we're looking at environments where we have all of those species that are already successful for their niche. So we're not going to see that much overlap. But what happens when we bring a different species into a new environment? Sometimes we call this an invasive species. And so you've heard invasive species. Why? Why does this happen? And so what happens is when you bring a species from another environment into a new one, it might share the same niche with a current species. And if it's better at that niche than the current species, now we're going to see a decline in that native species. And now we're going to call it an invasive species. This can affect the pet trade. I live in Southern California, and Southern California has some pretty fantastic weather. And there's many organisms that can survive in Southern California. Because of that, there's many animals that it is illegal to own as a pet in Southern California. But if you look at a place like Las Vegas, that's in the Nevada desert, most organisms would not be an invasive species for that environment because it's such a harsh environment. And so you can have pretty much any pet you want in Las Vegas. So I have a lot of friends that always talk to me about why can't they own a ferret? You know, ferrets make excellent pets. And so if you're in Las Vegas, you can have a ferret. And what happens if your ferrets escape and they run off into the desert? Well, they're probably going to die because the desert is so harsh. But in Southern California, what would happen if ferrets got out? Well, ferrets are fantastic hunters, and they could eat our native birds, our native rodents, our native lizards, and they can take over because our environment would allow them to do that. And so we have to be really careful about which animals we allow into certain environments so they don't end up hurting and disrupting the native population. Let's talk about the Redeared Slider as an example of an invasive species. So the Redeared Slider is a turtle. A lot of people in Los Angeles like to buy Redeared Sliders when they're babies. They're cute, they're adorable, but Redeared Sliders are a lot of work. They get large, they eat a lot, they're messy, and then people get tired of taking care of them. And so what happened was a lot of people who had Redeared Sliders would then go dump them in Echo Lake. And so Echo Park has a big lake, and Echo Park is pretty easy to get to. They would drop their Redeared Slider into the lake and then leave. And they'd think, oh, well, it'll have a great life and it'll enjoy Echo Park. But Echo Park originally had a California slider. It had a California turtle that lived there. But what happened was the Redeared Sliders are so good at surviving that they would outcompete the California slider, the California turtle. And so the Redeared Sliders would get all of the food, they would reproduce, they'd get all of the nesting spots. And so eventually we lost all of the native species of California turtle that lived in Echo Park, and now there's none left. And so this is an example of what happens when you have a species that has the same niche as another species and it's brought to that same area. What will happen is one will outcompete the other. And so Echo Park no longer has the native California turtle. So understanding an animal or organism's niche can help us understand its place, its role in an ecosystem and an environment. It can help us understand invasive species, and it can also help us understand how environments change. And so maybe an environment has changed and there's no organism that fits that new niche. Let's say that an area that used to have lots of water is now dry. Well, many of the organisms that used to habitat or used to live in that environment might go extinct or be lost because they don't really fulfill that niche anymore. And so different species will step up and fulfill that niche. So understanding a niche will help us better understand ecology. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning about what a niche is, or niche. I will see you guys next time.